You are 47. You walk into a government office on a Tuesday morning. No appointment. No urgency. Just one document to sign. The woman behind the counter smiles. She asks your name. Types for a few seconds. Then her posture changes. She asks if you'd like to sit while she prepares everything. Another employee brings you coffee. A supervisor introduces himself before you've asked a single question. The entire process takes less than 15 minutes. Walking back to your car, you think about the first time you stood inside this same building. Different clothes, different bank account, different life. Back then, nobody smiled. Nobody explained anything. Nobody had time for you. The strange part wasn't that the government changed. The strange part was that your financial life changed first. You don't know it yet, but you're about to discover something most people never notice. Governments don't just collect taxes. They interact with every level of wealth differently. Not because the rules are always different, because the opportunities, choices, and systems available to you change as your wealth grows. Rewind. You are 22, fresh out of school. Your bank account is almost empty. Every paycheck disappears before the next one arrives. Rent, food, gas, phone bill. Repeat. One afternoon your paycheck arrives. By evening, a large part of it is already gone. Taxes were taken before you even touched the money. You barely understand the numbers. You only know the final amount feels smaller than it should. You ask an older coworker why. He shrugs. That's just life. You believe him. Because everyone around you says the same thing. You work. You get paid. Taxes come first. You never question it. Across the office sits Ethan. Same age. Same salary. Different habits. The moment his paycheck arrives, he spends it. New shoes. New phone. Weekend trips. He jokes that saving is for old people. Everyone laughs. Including you. At the time, it sounds reasonable. You don't know it yet. But the difference between the two of you has already begun. You are 25. A small raise. Nothing dramatic. Enough to breathe a little easier. Most people celebrate. New apartment. New furniture. New monthly payments. You almost do the same. Then one evening, you open your banking app. Instead of upgrading your lifestyle, you move a small amount into investments. The number feels tiny. Almost meaningless. Nobody notices. Nobody congratulates you. Nobody even knows. The next morning, Ethan arrives with a brand new SUV. The parking lot becomes a showroom. Co-workers gather around. Questions. Compliments. Photos. Someone jokes that he's already rich. You know he isn't. His loan is almost as large as his excitement. Still, part of you wonders if you're making the wrong choice. Because invisible progress is lonely. Visible spending gets applause. That thought stays with you for months. You are 28. Tax season arrives. For the first time, you receive forms you've never seen before. Investment statements. Dividend reports. Interest income. Nothing large. Just enough to realize something. Money can arrive from places other than your employer. The realization feels strange. Your job still pays most of your bills. But a tiny part of your income arrived while you slept. You sit at the kitchen table staring at the numbers. The government still expects its share. But suddenly, you're learning that different kinds of income can be treated differently. You don't understand everything. You only understand one thing. The wealthy don't simply earn more. Many of them earn differently. That wasn't the real lesson. The real lesson arrives 6 months later. Ethan gets another raise. He celebrates by buying a bigger house. Bigger mortgage. Bigger furniture. Bigger expenses. His salary grows. So do his obligations. You quietly increase your investments instead. Nothing changes on the outside. Everything changes underneath. You are 31. A recession begins. News channels panic. Co-workers refresh financial headlines every hour. Layoffs spread through the company. The office becomes quieter. Fear settles into every conversation. One Friday afternoon, your manager calls everyone into the conference room. Some jobs disappear. Yours survives. Barely. Walking back to your desk, you realize something. For years, you thought the government represented security. Now you understand something different. Your greatest security isn't a policy. It's the distance between your monthly expenses and your available savings. That distance buys time. Time buys choices. Choices reduce fear. Nobody can see that number except you. Ethan calls that evening. His voice sounds different. Not angry. Not sad. Just tired. He says the mortgage suddenly feels much heavier. The SUV payment never stopped. The credit cards kept arriving. His salary had looked impressive. His cash flow never was. You hang up the phone and sit quietly in your living room. For the first time, you stop measuring wealth by income. You start measuring it by flexibility. That idea changes everything. You are 35. Your investments have grown enough to produce meaningful income. Not enough to retire. Enough to notice. A dividend appears. A bond payment arrives. A small capital gain lands in your account. You smile. Not because of the amount. Because the money wasn't connected to your working hours. That night, you begin reading about taxes again. Not because you enjoy taxes. Because you're beginning to understand something important. People at different wealth levels don't just pay different amounts. They often spend their time differently. Some trade hours for income. Others spend hours building assets that may continue producing income later. The tax system isn't the whole story. The way income is created becomes part of the story too. You don't become obsessed. You become curious. Curiosity quietly replaces frustration. Nobody notices. Your friends still think you're boring. They invite you less often. They assume you've become cheap. You don't argue. Because explaining long-term thinking to someone focused on next weekend rarely changes anything. You are 39. A government program offers incentives for retirement investing. Years earlier, you would have ignored the announcement. Now, you read every page. Not because you're trying to avoid responsibility. Because you're learning that rules can be understood instead of feared. Most people complain about systems. Very few study them. That difference begins separating your future from everyone else's. Ethan laughs when you mention retirement accounts. We're too young for that. You smile. Maybe. But time has never cared how old you feel. Every year you understand one more rule. Every year you make one slightly better decision. The changes remain invisible. Until one day, they aren't. You are 42. One Thursday afternoon, your employer announces a voluntary separation package. The office falls silent. People whisper in the hallways. Some immediately begin calculating bills. Others start updating their resumes before the meeting is even over. You walk back to your desk. Open your laptop. Not to search for another job. To check one number. Your monthly expenses. Then your investment income. For the first time, the gap between those two numbers is smaller than you imagined. You don't feel rich. You feel prepared. That feeling is worth more than excitement. It feels like breathing. Nobody around you notices. To them, you're just another employee packing up after another long day. They can't see the years hidden behind that moment. The weekends you invested instead of spent. The raises you didn't immediately inflate. The quiet decisions nobody applauded. Those decisions are standing beside you now. Invisible, but stronger than any paycheck. You accept the package. Not because you have to leave. Because you finally have the option. That's when you discover the greatest financial milestone isn't becoming wealthy. It's becoming difficult to control. Money doesn't just buy things. It changes the conversations you're forced to have. You are 45. A friend invites you to dinner. The conversation eventually turns to taxes. Everyone complains. The government takes too much. The rules aren't fair. Someone asks how much you paid last year. You answer honestly. Then you explain something else. You spent far more time planning than complaining. The table goes quiet. Because most people believe taxes begin when the bill arrives. You learn they begin with decisions made years earlier. How you save. How you invest. How long you hold assets. How you structure your financial life. The government didn't suddenly become generous. You simply stopped making every dollar look exactly the same. Income. Investments. Retirement accounts. Long-term ownership. Each followed different rules. The biggest surprise wasn't paying less than expected. It was finally understanding the system instead of fearing it. Across the table sits Ethan. He's listening more carefully than anyone else. He hasn't bought another luxury car. He sold the last one. The larger house is gone too. He quietly admits something. I kept trying to earn more. I never learned how money actually worked. Nobody laughs. Because everyone at the table realizes they've spent years working inside the system, without ever studying it. You drive home that night thinking about school. You remember learning equations, dates, history, geography. Nobody ever explained how taxes actually touched everyday life. Nobody explained why some people legally reduce what they owe while others never ask the first question. Knowledge wasn't reserved for the wealthy. Curiosity was. You are 48. Your accountant asks a simple question. What are your goals over the next 10 years? Years ago, you would have answered with purchases. A larger house, a newer car, better vacations. Now your answer is different. More time, more flexibility, more freedom to choose your mornings. The accountant smiles. Because financial planning becomes much simpler once the goal stops being appearances. The government still collects taxes. Markets still rise and fall. Laws still change. Life remains uncertain. But uncertainty feels different when your life isn't balanced on the next paycheck. You begin noticing something else. The wealthiest people you meet rarely spend much time talking about taxes. They spend time talking about ownership, businesses, investments, long-term decisions. Because taxes are often the result. Ownership is the cause. That wasn't the real lesson. The real lesson arrives a year later. You are invited to speak with younger employees entering the company. One of them raises a hand. What salary should I aim for? You pause. 5 years earlier, you would have answered with a number. Now, you answer differently. Aim to build a life where your choices become larger every year. The room goes quiet. Because everyone expected a salary. Nobody expected freedom. You explain that earning more matters. But keeping options matters even more. Every investment buys a future decision. Every unnecessary debt sells one. Every dollar quietly working in the background makes tomorrow slightly easier than today. You don't tell them to avoid taxes. You tell them to understand them. Because there is a difference between avoiding responsibility and learning the rules. One creates fear. The other creates confidence. You are 52. You wake up without an alarm. Sunlight fills the kitchen. Coffee steams beside the window. Your phone vibrates. Another dividend. Another interest payment. Another reminder that not every dollar now depends on today's work. You smile. Not because of the amount. Because of what it represents. Time. Choice. Peace. You think back to your first paycheck. The one that felt smaller than expected. Back then, you believed the government controlled your financial future. Years later, you understand something different. The government sets many of the rules. Your decisions determine how those rules affect your life. The difference is enormous. Some people spend decades fighting systems they never study. Others quietly learn them, not to exploit them, to navigate them. Just as learning traffic laws makes driving easier, learning financial rules makes building wealth easier. Neither guarantees success. Both reduce unnecessary mistakes. Looking out the window, you see your neighbors leaving for work. Some are just beginning the journey. Others are still trapped by decisions made years ago. You don't judge them, because you remember exactly what it felt like. The confusion, the frustration, the belief that earning more automatically solved everything. It didn't. Understanding did. The biggest surprise was never how the government treated you at different levels of wealth. The biggest surprise was how differently you treated money at each level. At first, money was survival, then comfort, then security, then freedom, and somewhere along the way, the government stopped feeling like an obstacle. It became another system to understand. Just like investing, just like business, just like life itself. The people who struggle the most often believe every rule exists to stop them. The people who quietly build wealth spend years learning which rules can help them. That small difference compounds, year after year, decision after decision, until one day, two people earning similar incomes live completely different lives. Not because one was luckier, not because one worked harder, because one learned that financial freedom isn't created by fighting every system. It's created by understanding the systems that already exist. The goal was never to become someone the government treated differently. The goal was to become someone whose life wasn't controlled by a single paycheck. Because wealth was never just about paying less tax. It was about buying more time, more choices, more peace. And the day your decisions became more powerful than your income was the day your future finally became your own.